Thatcher sneered as he looked down at the man kneeling before him. "Look at you, Vance," he spat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You've been scrubbing these floors for 20 years and you're still just a ghost in a blue jumpsuit. You're invisible. And starting today, you're officially unemployed." He stepped closer, leaning into the janitor's personal space. "Now get out of my sight before I have security throw you out like the trash you are." Vance didn't flinch. He remained still, his voice coming out soft but steady. "You should be careful which doors you close, Thatcher. You never know who is standing on the other side." Welcome to Moments and Meanings by Anne. I'm so glad you're here. Today's story is a powerful reminder that the way we treat those we think have nothing reveals exactly who we are. Thatcher thought he was firing an invisible janitor, but he was actually signing the end of his own career. Make sure you watch until the very end, because when the true owner of this empire finally steps into the light, Thatcher's world will come crashing down. Don't forget to subscribe and join our family of storytellers. Now, let's see how this all began. The morning sun glinted off the marble floors of Sterling Global Holdings, polished to a mirror finish. Vance moved with quiet pride, guiding a rhythmic buffer across the vast lobby. Despite his faded blue uniform, there was a dignity in his movements. He paused, holding the heavy glass door open for a stream of rushing employees, none of whom offered so much as a glance in his direction. Thatcher, the newly appointed senior director, suddenly strutted through the entrance. He moved like a man who owned the air he breathed, flanked by two younger associates, Sterling and Veda. Thatcher gripped a $2,000 Italian leather briefcase and the watch on his wrist glinted, a timepiece that cost more than Vance earned in a year. "I'm telling you, Veda," Thatcher declared loudly, ensuring those nearby could hear his wisdom. "The key to success is optics. You have to surround yourself with excellence. If you tolerate mediocrity, you become mediocre." He stopped abruptly, his polished shoes screeching against the stone. He pointed aggressively at a tiny, almost invisible scuff mark near the elevator bank. "Hey. You. Old man." Vance switched off the buffer, the hum dying down as he met Thatcher's gaze with a calm, steady look. "Yes, Mr. Thatcher?" "It's sir to you," Thatcher snapped. "Look at this. I pay a fortune in building fees so I don't have to look at filth. You've been here since this building was a hole in the ground, and you still can't get the corners right. Why are you even still here?" Vance remained unshaken. "I like this building, sir. I've watched it grow. I've seen every person who has walked through these doors. You'd be surprised what you can learn when people think you're part of the furniture." Sterling let out a sharp chuckle. "Listen to him. He thinks he's a philosopher. Vance, you're a guy with a mop. Your wisdom is about as valuable as the dirt you're cleaning." Veda checked her watch, nudging Thatcher. "Thatcher, let's go. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, and the mysterious major shareholder is supposed to be listening in. You don't want to be late because you were talking to the help." A cruel sneer twisted Thatcher's face. He intentionally tilted his hand, dropping a half-full cup of espresso onto the floor right at Vance's feet. The dark liquid splashed across the janitor's worn boots. "Clean that up," Thatcher commanded. "And try to do it with some dignity for once. It's embarrassing to have people like you representing a billion-dollar brand." Vance didn't say a word. He pulled a clean rag from his belt and knelt to the floor. As Thatcher and his group walked away, their laughter echoing through the lobby, Vance didn't look defeated. He looked at the closing elevator doors with a faint, knowing smile. Reaching into a hidden pocket, he checked a small, high-tech keycard, one that bore no resemblance to a janitor's ID, before tucking it safely away. An hour later, the tension in the office break room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Thatcher paced back and forth, stopping occasionally to admire his own reflection in the stainless steel refrigerator. Veda and Sterling watched him closely, sensing his desperation. The board of directors' vote for the new CEO was looming, and Thatcher was clearly on edge. "The board is split," Thatcher muttered, more to himself than to them. "If I don't get this promotion, my creditors are going to breathe down my neck. I need to show the board I'm a leader who makes tough calls. I need a scapegoat for these recent budget leaks." Veda leaned back with a cruel smirk. "Well, the board loves efficiency. Why don't you start by cutting the dead weight? The janitorial budget is huge, and let's be honest, Thatcher, that old man Vance is an eyesore. He's always lurking, watching, listening. Sterling nodded in agreement, fueling the fire. She's right. Getting rid of a 20-year veteran shows you aren't afraid to break traditions. It makes you look powerful, Thatcher. Cold. Like a real boss. A dark ambition gleamed in Thatcher's eyes. He didn't care that Vance had a spotless record or 2 decades of loyalty. He only saw a man's life as a convenient stepping stone for his own climb to the top. Vance was quietly emptying a trash bin. The peaceful silence was shattered as Thatcher stormed out of the boardroom, flanked by security and his 2 smirking associates. Thatcher had put on a mask of performative outrage. Vance. Stop right there. Thatcher bellowed. Vance paused, his expression remaining remarkably calm. Is there a problem, Mr. Thatcher? There's a massive security breach, Thatcher announced, his voice loud enough to draw an audience. Sensitive documents went missing from my desk this morning, and you're the only one with a master key to this floor. I've already told the board the truth. You're a thief. Vance's eyes narrowed slightly. You know that isn't true. I've protected this company since the day the foundation was poured. I don't care about your history. I care about my future. Thatcher barked. You're old, you're slow, and frankly, you make this company look cheap. I'm making an executive decision. He turned to the security guards, projecting his voice for the entire staff to hear. Take his keys. Escort him out. And make sure everyone knows that under my leadership there is no room for invisible people. Vance, you're fired. Effective immediately. And don't bother asking for a severance. Thieves get nothing. Veda and Sterling laughed, their phones raised to record the humiliation for social media. In a final act of disrespect, Thatcher snatched Vance's heavy ring of keys and dropped them into the very trash can Vance had been emptying. Go find a sidewalk to sweep, Vance, Veda mocked. You don't belong in a place like this. Vance looked Thatcher directly in the eye. He didn't look angry, he looked deeply disappointed, as if he were seeing a sad truth Thatcher couldn't yet perceive. You think power comes from how many people you can look down on, Vance said quietly. But true power is knowing that the person you're looking down on might be the only one holding you up. Get him out of here, Thatcher shouted, waving a dismissive hand. As security led Vance away, Thatcher smoothed his tie and adjusted his cuffs, feeling absolutely invincible. He thought he had just secured his empire. He had no idea he had just thrown away the keys from the man who actually owned the chair he was so desperate to sit in. The months bled into one another in a blur of mounting chaos. A montage of flipping calendar pages marked the passage of time. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and with every passing day, the prestige of Sterling Global Holdings withered. The once gleaming marble floors were now scuffed and dull, covered in a film of neglected dust. Trash cans overflowed in the corners of the executive suites, and the excellence Thatcher had so loudly promised had vanished entirely. Inside his office, Thatcher looked like a ghost of his former self. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie sat crooked and his hands trembled as he stared at a final notice of acquisition lying on his mahogany desk. The company's stock had plummeted into the red. Without Vance's quiet oversight, the man who had understood every mechanical heartbeat of the infrastructure and every whispered secret in the halls, the entire empire was crumbling from the inside out. The door swung open as Veda burst in, her face tight with panic. Thatcher. The board just called an emergency meeting. The mystery majority shareholder, the one who owns 51% of the parent company, is finally coming in person to sign the merger. If he doesn't approve your leadership today, we're all out on the street. Thatcher snapped back, his voice cracked with stress. I know. I've been trying to find out who he is for months, but the man is a ghost. He operates through a dozen shell companies. He's the most powerful man in this industry, and today is the first time he's ever set foot in this building. Sterling walked in behind her, rubbing his temples in frustration. The lobby is a disaster. The elevators are sticking again. I'm starting to wish we hadn't fired the old staff. These new contractors don't have a clue what they're doing. Shut up about the janitors, Thatcher yelled, slamming his hand on the desk. We have to focus. If this chairman sees even a hint of weakness, I'm finished. Let's get down to the lobby to greet him. This is our last chance. Down in the lobby, Thatcher, Veda, and Sterling stood in a rigid line near the entrance, frantically smoothing their clothes and wearing expressions of desperate hope. Outside, a fleet of black luxury SUVs pulled up to the curb with military precision. Security guards in high-end suits stepped out, forming a human corridor from the street to the glass doors. A man stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was dressed in a charcoal gray tailored suit that cost more than Thatcher's entire car collection. His shoes were polished to a high mirror shine, the kind of flawless finish only someone who truly understood the value of a clean floor could ever achieve. In his hand, he carried a heavy gold-trimmed walking stick. As the man crossed the threshold, Thatcher bowed his head slightly, forced his lips into a fake, oily professional smile, and stepped forward. "Mr. Chairman, it is an absolute honor," Thatcher gushed. "I am Thatcher, Senior Director. I've been managing this estate with the utmost care, waiting for the day I could finally show you." The chairman stopped in his tracks. Slowly, with a deliberate hand, he lowered his sunglasses. Thatcher's voice died in his throat. The blood drained from his face, leaving him a ghostly, sickly white. Beside him, Veda's hand went limp, and her phone slipped from her fingers, the screen shattering as it hit the marble floor. Standing before them was Vance. There was no mop in his hand, and no blue jumpsuit on his back. He stood tall, radiating the quiet authority of a man who had built empires. Vance's voice came out deep and commanding, echoing through the lobby he once cleaned. "Hello, Thatcher. I see you still haven't fixed that scuff mark by the elevator. I told you. You never know who is standing on the other side of the door." The entire lobby fell into a deathly silence. Employees stopped in their tracks, coffee cups forgotten in their hands, staring in absolute disbelief at the man they had walked past for years without a second glance. Thatcher was visibly hyperventilating, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the edge of the reception desk just to keep his legs from buckling. "Vance?" Thatcher stammered, his voice thin and reedy. "No. This has to be some kind of sick joke. You're a janitor. I saw you. I smelled the bleach on your hands for years." Vance began to walk forward, the rhythmic, heavy thud of his expensive leather shoes echoing through the cavernous lobby like a countdown. He stopped only inches from Thatcher, his towering presence dwarfing the younger man who had once tried to make him feel small. "I didn't just work in this building, Thatcher. I built it," Vance said, his voice calm but ironclad. 30 years ago, I started this company with nothing but a dream and a willing set of hands. But I saw the executives I hired, the people I treated like my own children, becoming blinded by their own reflected light. I decided to step down, put on a blue uniform, and see who was actually fit to lead my legacy when they thought the bosses wasn't looking. Veda's voice was trembling as she stepped back. "But the documents. Thatcher said you were a thief. He had proof." Vance turned his piercing gaze toward her before shifting it back to Thatcher. He reached into his inner blazer pocket and pulled out a small, sleek digital tablet. The documents Thatcher found were planted by him to cover up his own embezzlement, Vance revealed. "He thought I was just an invisible old man lurking in his office to empty the trash. He didn't realize that while I was there, I was actually monitoring the keystrokes on his computer. I am your security breach, Thatcher. I've been watching you bleed this company dry just to feed your own ego." "Vance, sir," Sterling interjected desperately, his bravado completely gone. "We were just following Thatcher's lead. We didn't mean any of it. Loyalty is not following a wolf over a cliff," Vance countered. "Loyalty is protecting the pack. You two were just as eager to kick a man while he was down as he was." Vance reached into his pocket and pulled out the heavy ring of master keys, the very same keys Thatcher had tossed into the trash 6 months ago. He held them up high, the metal glinting sharply in the lobby's recessed lighting. "You told me that thieves get nothing." "And you were right," Vance said. "You tried to steal my dignity, my reputation, and my mother's legacy. So today, you get exactly what you earned." He turned slightly to his head of security. "Hand Mr. Thatcher the severance package I prepared for him." The security guard stepped forward and handed Thatcher a single, heavy black garbage bag. Confused and trembling, Thatcher looked inside. There was no money, no documents, only the dirty, coffee-stained janitor's uniform Thatcher had forced Vance to wear on his final day. "Since you love optics so much, Thatcher, How does this look? Vance asked, his voice echoing. You aren't just fired, you're banned from this industry. I've already sent the evidence of your fraud to the district attorney. You wanted to be a tough leader? Let's see how tough you are when the only thing you have to manage is a prison cell. Thatcher's strength finally gave out, and he collapsed into a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. He wept silently as the invisible man he had despised stood over him like an immovable mountain. 1 week later, the lobby of Sterling Global Holdings felt like a different world. The cold, sterile tension that once hung in the air had been replaced by a warm, energetic hum. The scuff marks on the floor had been polished away, but more importantly, the spirit of the office had finally been restored. Vance stood by the elevator, looking finally at peace. He was dressed simply in a high-quality sweater and slacks, watching his employees move with a newfound light in their eyes. Beside him stood Jada, the receptionist who, months ago, had been the only person to offer Vance a cup of water while he worked. Today, a new manager badge was pinned to her blazer. The floors look good today, Jada, Vance noted with a smile. But the smiles on the team look even better. It's amazing what happens when people finally feel seen, sir, Jada replied warmly. Thank you for the opportunity. I still can't believe you chose me. Vance turned to her, his expression sincere. You saw me when I was wearing nothing but a name tag and a mop, Jada. That's the only resume I ever needed to see from you. Outside, through the towering glass doors, the world moved on. Thatcher stood on the sidewalk, looking disheveled in a cheap, wrinkled suit. He clutched a soggy cardboard box filled with his remaining belongings, staring up at the building he once thought he owned. His face was a mask of bitter regret. As he turned to walk away, he tripped, his box spilling open onto the pavement. The wealthy pedestrians swarmed past, stepping right over his things without a single glance. To the world he once tried so hard to impress, he was now the one who was invisible. Thatcher spent his whole life trying to be the most important person in the room, only to realize he was actually the smallest, Anne said. He thought power was about who you could step on, but he learned the hard way that the person holding the mop might just be the person holding your entire future. In the end, he didn't lose his job because of a secret. He lost it because of his soul. Wealth is what you have, but character is who you are. Never treat someone like they are invisible, because the world has a funny way of making sure the truth comes to light. Because at the end of the day, every moment has a meaning, but not every truth is easy to face. If this lesson resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe to our family, Anne concluded. Comment the word visible below if you believe that every human being deserves respect, regardless of their job title. I'm Anne, and this is Moments and Meanings, and I'll see you in the next story.